Welcome. Today, we're diving into an article by an author named Donald Jeffries. It's his breakdown of the Epstein Files. Now, our goal here is simple. We're just going to neutrally summarize what the author claims to have found and the specific allegations he presents in his analysis. So, let's get into it, starting with his first impressions.
So right off the bat, the author, Jeffries, says that the first thing that jumps out when you look at these email exchanges is what he calls their overt Jewish nature. He presents this as a kind of core theme, a worldview that's expressed in the files, and he uses that as a lens for a lot of what follows.
And to illustrate that point, the article pulls this direct quote, which it attributes to Jeffrey Epstein from one of the emails. According to the author, a statement like this is just one example of how that particular theme pops up in the files.
Okay, so this brings us to the real heart of the article. It's just a staggering number of pretty shocking allegations against a whole lot of public figures. We're going to walk through some of the biggest ones that the author points out.
Then, the source brings up two totally separate claims involving Bill Gates. The first is a personal one, that it contracted an STD. The second, which is from a 2017 email, alleges that he and Epstein were in the middle of planning a strain pandemic simulation.
And this is where the allegations get, well, incredibly extreme. The article recounts a witness who claims they saw former President George H.W. Bush commit a horrific act of sexual violence against a young boy on a yacht, where, unbelievably, cannibalism was also alleged to be happening.
The author then points to this email, which is supposedly a response from an FBI agent. He presents this quote as key evidence to suggest that, hey, maybe the agency already knew about abuse allegations against the former president. The "to" is the word he really focuses on.
And of course, the royal family is pulled into this as well. The source cites an email that alleges Ghislaine Maxwell recruited a model who was then tortured by Prince Andrew, and that the prince later ordered her to be killed.
You know, the list just keeps going. The source mentions a ton of other high-profile names. People like Barack Obama, Tom Hanks, George Clooney, and Kevin Spacey were all allegedly seen on Epstein's island, with different accusations against them. And Bill Clinton's name, of course, is mentioned frequently throughout the whole thing.
So it's not just about direct allegations. The author then shifts gears to talk about what he calls a strange coded language that's used all through the emails. He argues that some words just show up way too often and in weird contexts, suggesting they've got to have hidden meanings.
The biggest example he gives is the word pizza. The author states that, based on his research into these kinds of underground code words, pizza is actually a term for little girls.
But here's the kicker for the author. It's how often it shows up. The article claims the word pizza appears up to 911 times in the files. He just finds that number to be ridiculously high for normal conversation, and he presents it as something deeply, deeply suspicious.
And it doesn't stop with pizza. To make his point, the author points to other bizarre phrases that keep recurring. For example, he cites emails that mention grape soda in weird contexts like, "Let's go for pizza and grape soda again? No one else can understand." It just makes him ask, okay, what in the world could that be code for?
All right, let's shift gears a bit, because beyond the alleged crimes themselves, the article really tries to paint this picture of just how immensely powerful and influential Epstein supposedly was. This next part is all about the author's claims regarding his connections to the absolute highest levels of global power. To give you an idea of the scale we're talking about, the source zeroes in on one name, Rothschild. It claims that name appears around 12,000 times in the files. It even cites one email where Epstein supposedly tells Peter Thiel, "As you probably know, I represent the Rothschilds." So, the author basically sketches out this incredible chain of influence. He notes that when some associate couldn't get a meeting with Vladimir Putin, Epstein just arranged it, and he allegedly did the same thing with the Pope. It just showcases this extraordinary, almost unbelievable reach.
And the author's whole point here is that this network was just vast. It spanned tech, politics, culture, you name it. The emails reportedly mention figures like Peter Thiel, Steve Bannon, Marco Rubio, Deepak Chopra, and Woody Allen, all illustrating how Epstein's orbit supposedly connected all these different worlds.
Okay, so this all brings us to the author's final big theme, a really deep suspicion about how the whole case has been officially handled. He raises a lot of questions about the investigation and even suggests the release of the files itself might be a kind of managed, controlled narrative.
And he basically just puts the question out there directly. He says that in the documents he's seen, Donald Trump's name is supposedly never redacted, but the names of other powerful people often are. And that leads him to question the motive.
Why release some names but not others?
Now, to be fair, the article does include this official denial from Kash Patel, the former Pentagon chief of staff. He's quoted strongly refuting any suggestion that he's part of some kind of cover-up related to child trafficking.
And this is where the author really drives home his point about what he sees as a two-tiered system of justice. He contrasts a statement from the Deputy Attorney General saying you need more than troubling emails to prosecute elites, with the simple fact that a regular person can get prosecuted for just an online chat in a police sting operation.
So, when you boil it all down, the author's conclusion is pretty bleak. He basically states his belief that, despite this mountain of allegations, the powerful people involved are effectively above the law. He says they won't be held accountable by what he calls a corrupt and inconsistent legal system.
So, what are we left with after going through all this? Well, this examination of the author's article presents a deeply, deeply unsettling world. It's filled with dark allegations against some of the most powerful people on the planet, and it ends by leaving us with a fundamental question. What happens when justice seems completely and totally out of reach?